Gerry, unmute yourself. Gerry, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, good. All right. So we're going to start the slideshow now, and we're going to start it from the beginning. And I had double clicked the share computer sound. So we're going to start rolling. Now, there's the one person that I know in our club that has also been to Bhutan, and that was Charlene Clemens. I don't know if anyone else has, but anyhow, we're going to start rolling here. Okay. People always ask, where the heck is Bhutan? Well, Bhutan is in Southeast Asia, and it's surrounded on three sides by India. Here you can see that. And the other side is Tibet. Otherwise, there it lies just east of Nepal, okay? And this is the country of Bhutan. If you take a look down on the lower left, there's a scale here. See, it says 16 miles. Well, if you do that and you go across here, that's roughly a little over 100 miles wide, and it's roughly 55 miles deep. So it's a very small country. And when we flew in, we flew from Dallas to Bangkok, and we flew from Bangkok then up to Bhutan. And so this was the first view that we had as the plane turned and headed west. Now we're looking at the eastern Himalayas here. And so the plane then made a landing at the Paro International Airport, which is a standard way of getting into Bhutan. It's a very hazardous landing. What you see here is the Zong. And what you're looking at is 1/4 of their entire Air Force. And that happens to be an A320. They have two of these A320s and then two prop planes, but that's their entire fleet for the National Air Force. So from there, then we drove from Paro up to Thimphu, which is the capital of Bhutan. And so as we came into town, it's spread along a valley, and there's just all kinds of construction going on because the capital was moved recently from a city over in the eastern side of Bhutan to Thimphu. So there's just all kinds of construction going on to house the workers and the people that are moving into the area. Our first stay there was at this Namgay Heritage Hotel, and we used that at the beginning and the end of our trip. And this vehicle that you see over here in the lower right is the vehicle that we used for the entire trip. You see a man standing on top, that's our driver. That's where all our luggage went, was up on top. You'll see it a little bit later. So our first activity when we were in Thimphu was to go to a Zong. And so you say, well, what is a Zong? If you think of the word castle in our country here, that would be what the Zong is equal to. And so before we went in, our guide had to give us all the do's and don'ts. We did not have to wear masks at that point because this was before COVID-19. Right next to the Zong is the Royal Palace, and this is where the head of the government lives. It's Bhutan's White House. Doesn't look quite as noble as the White House does. But inside the Zong, there are many structures. Remember, it's a castle. And so this is just a few of the things that we saw there. Most of these things that are inside that Zong are many centuries old, as I say. So it's also a site that is, it's a monastery. It's serving as a monastery and a castle. So there are monks that are walking all over. Because it's a monastery, you'll see prayer wheels everywhere inside of there. And after we visited the Zong, then we went to the park, the preserve, and this is a picture of their national animal. Kind of looks a little bit like a Buffalo, if you can imagine. That's much smaller, but that's where all the Takans of the whole country are located now. They routed them up and brought them here. Our next grip, you're sharing? Okay. The next thing that we saw then was the stupa. And we were, I think some of us did 3 trips around this, but most of us just did one. Right next to it was this rest area where many of the people that were here are very old people, and so they had to get out of the sun after. So this was kind of a cross section of people that from their country, what they look like. They don't look exactly like Chinese. They don't look like Indian. Well, they're from that area, and that's what they look like, okay? After we left Thimphu, then we headed east. And I guess I've got a little bit later to show you where we were, where we went to. Not sure why I'm getting this thing on top here. It keeps dropping down. This is the Dokla Pass between Thimphu and Punakha. We were headed to Punakha, but we had to cross this 10,000 foot pass. And so this is what it looked like. We stopped there to have a look around, and there was his. And off in the very distance here, you'll see what's actually the northern border of Bhutan. And those are the Himalaya mountains. The country actually goes from a very low elevation, like only 1,000 feet at the southern part of the country. It goes up to over 24,000 feet on the north end, just 55 miles away. And so here is a placard that shows which mountains we were looking at. It's kind of beat up, but the highest mountain at the far right, which was this one then, would be 24,000, almost 24,600 feet. So this is then a close-up of, this was the mountain almost to the north of us, and then this is the highest mountain in all of Bhutan. That's the one that's 24,000, almost 600 feet. So after we left that high point, then we headed down to the city of Punakha. We stayed overnight here at this very nice lodge. Every one of us, it wasn't just a hotel. We had separate rooms in this place. We walked in here. Our dining area was in here. The office was here. Many of us had rooms down in this area here. Some of them actually, at any rate, I don't know where they all were. This was a little chapel, or I guess you'd probably call it a chapel, just off to the side where the buses turned around. Oops, going the wrong way. And this is a picture that was in, 2 pictures that were in that office. And what it is, it's a picture of the current ruler and his wife, who are here in this picture, and their son. Now this is the last 100 years, and this is all in the Wangchuck family. So this was the first one. It goes around this way, and it ends up with this picture, who happens to be the current ruler right now. But that's 100 years worth of rulers there. This was looking down from our hotel. This was the town of Punakha, and so we headed out the next morning. We went across this bridge that's right there, and then up the valley to see what we were going to see that day. And so they took us to the farthest end of this, almost to the farthest end of this. We crossed this very wobbly suspension bridge, and I waited till everybody was across, because this thing had, the kids as they walked across went up and down, and I don't handle wobbly footing very well at all. The reason they took us over to this area is that they wanted us to climb to the top of this hill up to this it's not a monastery. Anyhow, it's at the top. So what they wanted to do was acclimate us to the heights, going higher and higher every day. So We started up that place, and as we kept going higher, it kept getting narrower and narrower. And I got up, well, I turned around and took this picture. This is what was in the valley behind us as we started going higher. So what we got here is barley and wheat and other crops. And Iz took these pictures because I didn't go all the way up to the top of this, At any rate, Iz took the pictures up there, and this is what she saw. So I stayed and I watched these guys work. And what they were doing, they got permission to cut lumber in the surrounding hills. So what they're doing now is planing this stuff by hand. That's what they're doing, is chopping that. They'll plane it down to a uniform thickness and then take and sell that. After we came down from that top again, then we went to lunch here. Our lunch was many times carried with us. They picked up the lunch at the hotel and brought it with us in the back of the van. Okay. So as we were eating, I just noticed that dogs seem to be everywhere in this country. They are very tolerant of stray dogs, stray cats also, but you see a lot more dogs than you see cats. This is a picture of the national bird. You probably think they're crows, but they're not. They're ravens, which are much larger than crows. And they were everywhere also. So as we went again we went to the Punakha Zong, which was a little bit further up yet. Actually, no, we passed this. I'm sorry, we passed this on the way up. But this is the Punakha Zong. And when we came back down, we saw this another time. I got some pictures of the interior of this. I guess I included the pictures here. So the royal family visits here at least once a year. And so we had to climb these really steep steps here, and it wasn't bad going up. Here you see handrails. There are no handrails going up or down. This was the interior then of it. Again, we have the same style of architecture in many of the buildings in the cities in Bhutan. There's a 100-year-old tree that was just inside of it. After we visited the Zong, then we went across this suspension bridge, and they had to show us this because it's the longest suspension bridge in all of Bhutan. And having walked across that thing, the previous one, I said, I'm not going to go on that thing. It's going to be swaying back and forth. But it turns out that this is a very stable bridge because, as you can see on the sides there, you can see it's anchored on both sides. And Iz did the trip across and back. But what was interesting about this particular bridge, let me get to zoom in here. All I got to do is find it. Okay, I'm going to zoom in right here. What you see is an animal. This is a bull that also walked across this bridge. So this bull makes the trip back and forth several times a week. Anyhow, so then we were now packing up to leave our hotel here, whatever, and we were headed out for our trip further east. Now you can see our driver's up there. He loads all the suitcases, all our gear, and then he puts a tarp over it, which is, in case it rains, it's not going to get wet. It's not going to fall out either. So that's a duty he has every time when we leave. Now, on our way out, then we went up to the top of the hill that the motel was located on. We went up to this Buddhist college for nuns. And of course, these are all women, and they're all young. They're all under like 14, 15 years old at the very oldest. Okay, and so we saw that. This was their main building then, with the eyes looking out at us. And when we left, we walked past this on the way in and the way out, and I thought they were building something permanent here, which I thought looked kind of shaky. But turns out that the royal couple had visited here previously, and they're actually taking this thing down rather than building it. So So from that site, then this was a view up the valley that we had visited the previous day. So the Zong is actually up and out of sight here. We then stopped in the town of Lobisa, and the reason we stopped here was to visit this fertility site, and so we took a long walk through this valley. This site was consecrated or designated, whatever you call it, to this to the person you see way up at the top, and it says a date here, and that's actually not his lifespan, because he'd be 115 years old. He lived to be about 70 years old, but at any rate, he was responsible for changing the way people looked at life in this area. And then this fertility temple was built in his honor. And so we had to, every time we went inside, we couldn't take any pictures, but we didn't have to wear masks inside either, but we could talk. But we were always given not a message about what this thing entailed. So again, there was a great big, this was really a big prayer wheel in this particular site. See a bunch of prayer wheels off to the side here. But these were some of the children that we passed on the way into the site. So just some things that we saw on the way to go. I think we probably walked maybe a mile and a half or maybe 2 miles to get there. And then we had to walk all the way back to catch the bus. So these are some of the things that we saw. They had harvested the rice here. And what you see then is the straw from the rice that is grown here. Now you see them harvesting rice here, and it's very labor intensive. They used a machine to row crop the rice over in this picture. And then they harvested it here on this tarp. It's what they did. They just beat the hell out of those shocks or bundles of rice. Where we passed was a woman tending her garden here. It looks like she's either got chives or onions, what the heck ever that stuff was she was growing. We also passed this patch of spinach, and virtually every meal that we had over there included spinach. And it was this kind of stuff. It was very good. It wasn't anything like the spinach that we grow here. The leaves were very good, but it had a very tough and long stem. As we left that area, then here's a big crop of rice that's being harvested. Can you imagine? They've got to do all of this stuff. They've got to beat every one of these stalks of rice to get the grains out. But it's a very, very long job for these people that are doing that. The roads were, for the most part, very narrow, but at this point, the roads are actually pretty good compared to what we were going to see. Because we left Punakha then and headed to our furthest easternmost destination. We stopped here at a place to have tea. The drivers they can only drive so long, they have to take a break. So this is, I think, where we were really supposed to have stayed, which would have been out in the country. And we liked the place that we did actually stay better. And what you see many places in Bhutan at this time of the year especially are these roofs covered with this stuff. And what these are is chili peppers. So they sun dry them. Here you can see some yellow ones you can see some yellow chili peppers here. Mostly they're red though. After we left that tea spot, then we saw a bunch of langur monkeys. And these were quite a ways off the road. So we stopped and took several pictures of them. After we left them, remember I said the roads got a little bit narrower. Here's an example of how much narrower they get. This guy is, and by the way, they drive the way the British do. They drive on the left side of the road, not the right side. So he's on the correct side, but he doesn't leave us a whole lot of room, and he's going to have to get way off the road in order to get past us. So after we left that tar road, then now we got onto a narrow dirt road, and the roads just kept getting narrower and narrower. Finally, we were on just kind of a dirt path, and we passed a herd of yaks. These things are right next to the bus, so we don't know whether they're tame or wild, but anyhow, we finally then reached our destination, and we drove across. When we got down to the bottom of this valley, we drove across some of the roughest roads that we had on the whole trip. And so we made a trip all the way around through this thing. And we crossed this. This is an example of the bridge that we had, okay? The roads, or the logs, there were plenty big. We didn't have to worry about falling through them, but our bus driver had to hit these just right. And so when we did finally get there, I made the comment, this place better be good, because there was one harrowing ride across those dirt roads to get there. So this was the staff then that met us at the place, and well, here, you can see our lodging in the background here. We got into the inside, and these things had been built only 18 months prior to it. And so this was just an outstanding place. Brand new, of course, shower and area and the beds. And these were the rugs that were on the floor. You just didn't hardly want to walk on the things that were so beautiful. And after we were in our room, all of a sudden the lights went out. And it turns out that the lights go out quite often in this area because they have a very poor system coming down into this valley from the main trunk. Anyhow, so the lights went out in our rooms, and of course they went out in the kitchen, the mess hall too. And so we walked over to the mess hall, and here they were making our food in the dark by candlelight. After a while, then the lights came back on, and so they did finish our meal. But so in the morning, then we got to see what the place looked like because it was virtually dark when we got there. And so I did a little movie screen here to show you what it looked like. We all had little walk paths out to get us then at the very end of all these walk paths where they're headed to is the dining area, which is the farthest thing east in this area. They still are building some structures here. This looks like a fourplex at any rate. When we did leave then, this cow is walking across that bridge, and if the cows are on the road, you have no choice but to drive behind the cows at their pace. So, but that's probably the best pace anyhow, because the roads are so doggone rough. And so the first thing then we did the next morning was to walk down to visit this once in a year celebration, welcoming the black-necked cranes. And so we were heading down this thing. It was supposed to be a mile down, or I think it was closer to 2.5 miles that we walked. Thankfully, it was downhill rather than uphill. But we headed down this valley, and off in the distance, then we actually came out of the woods at this point, and you can see our destination here in the distance. And so we weren't the only people that were hurrying to get there. There were a lot of people that were coming behind us with food and whatnot. And so we are nearing this thing as we get here. And I think the next picture is what you're going to see is what we visited about. And I hope you can hear the sound. So this is what was going on. This is the first thing that we saw as we got there. And so they had demonstrations of dances by different groups. Okay, so, and then as the groups were performing, then they all performed for anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. So did. Each group then was judged by this group of elders in this tent. Again, now this is a picture of what the people in this part of the country look like. These are some gestures, of course, but you can see the people again in the background here. Some of the young children. Okay. And there are also a lot of Buddhist monks. Some of them are very young, but they were sharing this tent. They thankfully for the foreign people, they had tents where we could sit in because it was very hot under that sun. And we were there for about an hour and a half, and then we left by a different route. And some of the people there, they wanted us to take their pictures, so I obliged them and took these pictures. This was a group, I'm not sure whether they had performed or they were going up to perform, but they're going to have their day in the sun too. These are what some of these peppers look like. Actually, some of them look like pea pods, but they're peppers. And our bus, then we were going to leave by a different route, so we had to walk all the way past all these buses, and our destination from there then was to go to this crane center. So we went inside of here and had probably 15-20 minute demonstration. You can see off in the distance here, this is where that celebration was going on. But this is a picture now of a black-neck crane. And this one had been injured, and so it would never fly again. So it's going to live out its days here in this shelter. We were promised to have a meal served by the locals. And so this was our day in the sun to go up and have the meal. So we all climbed the stairs here, and you can see that the stairs are pretty well worn. And this was a picture on the inside of some of the things that we saw. Now, going up was very easy because the handrails were right about easy to grasp. On the way down, of course, there were no handrails because they were down by your ankles. So one of our group slipped at the top step, went all the way down on his butt down these stairs, and I don't think that's how those stairs got worn by people going down on their butts. But anyhow, so this was our dinner then. That it was a typical dinner that a Bhutanese people would have. And the big thing in this meal was French fried potatoes. So everybody just kept loading up on the potatoes. The rest of the meal was fine, but nobody had potatoes at this point. They're grown in this valley, and it's one of the few places that potatoes are grown. Now, from our lodging down below, this was a picture of the monastery, and so we were going to visit that the next day. One of the things they told us about the black-neck cranes come to this valley, and it's the only place that they come to in Bhutan. They come out of Russia, and they fly down. They come out of Russia. They don't come out of China. They come out of Russia. They fly down. They circle above this monastery so many times. Can't remember. I think they said 9 times. And then they fly down to their nesting area. And when they leave, they do the same thing. They fly up here en masse, circle above the monastery, and then head back north, which I thought was an interesting tradition that that these cranes had. So when we got up there, we went up there to view that monastery then. And it was there was under restoration, so there was nobody there. We were taken into the show to be shown the big Buddhist statues inside, which we couldn't take pictures again of. So anyhow, so the only pictures then that we have are the outside grounds. Again, look at all the prayer wheels at this particular place. Some of the Buddhist monks were there. These are some of the younger ones, of course. So they were housed someplace else. And as we walked around, these were some of the timbers that were brought out. They're going to be used again. These were in good enough shape to be used again, but most of the timbers that were going to be used in there were cut outside. They're stacked up in piles, and they were going to be put in the roof in different places. And anyhow, they were all cut and milled and ready to go in place. This was a picture then now of our lodging down here at the base of the valley right below us. And of course, this was our breakfast and dinner site, and we were in the lower half of this one. again, our bus came in, parked here, drove up this, here's the bridge right in here, drove around all this stuff and came out here. And then it took probably close to an hour to get from here to out of this valley where we could start climbing because the roads were so darn rough. This again was the gate into the monastery. Okay, so this was a little demonstration that we went through, and the group was brought into the kitchen and to prepare momos, which are probably, if you've ever eaten dim sum, momos are the equivalent of dim sum that you'd find in China and Japan, etc. At any rate, everybody was given the opportunity to make momos. This was a picture then of the interior of the breakfast and dinner area. Some very sturdy tables and equipment there. When we got ready to leave, the bus driver asked us to get out. So we had everything loaded up and we had to walk all the way out. And part of the reason was you can see here all these sharp stones. He didn't want to puncture the tires. He went out a different way than he went in anyhow. So he asked us all to walk out, and that's what we did. Okay. So we had to cross this last bridge, and then we piled back into the bus and took off. Now, when we kind of backtrack, we're going to head back to Thimphu, but we came across another troop of langur monkeys, and these guys were sitting right next to the road. So we didn't have to use long range lenses to get these guys. They were sitting right next to the road. So this is what the langur monkey looks like. We got back to Thimphu then. One of the first things we did was to have, of all things, pizza. Because everybody was kind of starved for pizza. We had people from all over the world, which I'll show you in a little bit. But after we finished our pizza, then we were taken up to the big Buddha complex, which is above the city itself. Now, this is the largest seated Buddha in the world. The previous largest Buddha in the world was located in Hong Kong, but this one stands quite a bit larger or taller. This is some of the statues that were around the area. When you visit the one in Hong Kong, these statues are right at the base. I mean, there's just a little walkway around, but there's a great big area where you can get an idea of how wide that is. And here now, this is the city of Thimphu down below us, so you can see it is way up on the hill. These were pictures that I took when we were leaving the valley in the first place, and I didn't realize that we were going to be visiting this a little bit later on, but that's what it looked like from away. The next thing that we did, we stayed overnight then in Thimphu, but we got up and we went to these schools, the arts and craft schools. And I thought this was very interesting. It's something that we could put here in this country here. Get skilled, be somebody, be useful to yourself, be useful to your parents, be useful to the community, and be useful to wherever you are. So they took us then in to see some of the things that they did here. And you can see now this is a weaving center. And so we were taken in, showing how they do it. Of course, they're doing this stuff by hand. They're not doing this by machine. It's all handcrafted. Inside of there then were these pictures of the royal couple. They're very proud of their royal family there. Again, this is the young couple. And this, I'm not sure exactly who these all are, but we can see here the father and the son. This is probably their son right there, but these are probably brothers and sisters of the royal family. We were then taken over to see this place where they did this artistry here, and they said some of these people worked for 6 months. If you look, this is very fine stitching. If you look at some of this, can you imagine doing all this stuff by hand? It's just amazing. These are two separate ones, but look at the intricate work that was in there. This this was a painting that caught my attention because it's maybe drawn from a place, I'm not sure, but these are, of course, our yaks loaded down with things traveling. After we left Thimphu, then we were going to make our furthest trip west. So Thimphu comes here, and this again is now Paro. It's just where the airport is that we drove or flew into, and which we'll fly out. But we're going to go to the town of H-A. And so, gosh, we had come down this road here is a nice tar road, 2 lanes all the way. We made the turn here, and it's a dirt road. Or no, I'm sorry, it was a tar road, but it was a single lane tar road. And if you look at this thing, it was just going back and forth. And again, now we'll do this pass right here. And didn't realize it, but when we came back, we went to this nunnery here. You'll see some pictures of that later. But we were going to to see this famous town as well as the monastery there. And on the way, you can see now, look how close, there's just one road here, and we met things like this. And so we each had to pull off to the side and hope our mirrors didn't run against each other. As we were going up this place, so we passed these things, and well, this was an odd place to have a town in the middle of nowhere on this road, but turns out these were built for the highway workers that they have a lot of maintenance on these roads that do pass over these mountains, or roads going both north and south and east and west here. So there's a lot of maintenance. When we did finally reach the town of this was coming down. This is the extent of the town here. It's pretty small, the town. There are valleys here, so they do grow crops up and down this valley, but this is a town that we came to see. And our main thing to visit here was this temple. And we got there, and it was pretty much time for the monks all to have closed up shop for the day. But they had arranged, they were going to have a concert for us that night. So at any rate, these are some of the things that we saw in there. The monks here were actually pretty young. There were some that looked to be, would be in grade school. These are very young boys. And again, this was our guide here. He's dressed in his official garb. When he's not with the group and visiting someplace public, he has to be dressed like this. This is the head monk there. And so parts of this temple were built in the 7th century. Much of it was restored during 2017. And I guess these candles would be something like we'd say they're votive candles here, the equivalent to that. And after we had visited the monastery, then we were going to stay overnight in and so some of the people wanted to go down to town to see what the town was like and to buy snacks. So I bet our storekeeper was happy to see us because we probably had his biggest sale of the day, no doubt. Our guide now is holding up a piece of cheese. That's a cheese here, and I think that's actually a beer that our guide has got there also. Now this was our facility at this place. Again, very nice. These are real boards. It's not paneling. These are all boards. And so then we had our meal, and then we went. No, I take that back. We went to this place first. We were going to hear the concert, and it turns out there was no concert after all. So this is what the place looked like at night. And we left here, and so we went to dinner afterwards. This now is on the way back out, and we're going through this pass, which is over 12,800 feet high. These are flags that commemorate not different events, but they commemorate people and their gods at any rate. So we stopped here, some of the people took a little gander up this hill here, and you can see then there's a pretty steep hill here. These are some people heading up. And at any rate, now this is a mountain that is behind us, and this is um, um, this is the equivalent of, it's not the equivalent of, it's actually like 23,000 feet. So it's much higher than Denali Mountain. Now, Denali Mountain is only 20,600 feet. But this is a mountain that is sacred. Nobody is allowed to climb this mountain. Nobody ever has climbed that mountain, at least in recorded history. And this was our 11th wedding anniversary on this particular day. So we had to have our picture taken in front of the mountain. And so then we left that pass and then we drove down to see the last big thing on our trip between there. And this is the monastery that I pointed out on that map. Again, these are just women that live here. It's a convent. It's not a monastery. It's a convent. But just take a look at the buildings here. They're just clinging to this side of this mountain. And so the path leads here. Again, I didn't go up this thing because I get very queasy when I walk paths like this with no handrails. So Iz run up there. She's very brave. And anyhow, so this is some of the things. Now look how this thing is just clinging to the side of the mountain. I don't know what happens if they got a little rock slide because there's not a whole hell of a lot of protection from falling rocks. They did have some livestock there, and I'm not sure what purpose they served, but now you can see from here, you can see this was taken by Iz. You can see the path out here kind of winds past, and we parked way back here. Now, we did a loop out of here, and this was the road that leads out of there. There's not a place to meet anybody on this road. It's just the width of the vehicle. So one person has to back out if they do meet. So at any rate, our lunch then that particular day was another one served out in the middle of nowhere. And so they set up our tables and brought food out of the back of the van again. And so we ate. It was all very nice. But so on the way back down then, our bus driver stopped and let everybody get out to take this particular picture. I shot this picture out of the back of the bus because nobody got this. Everybody piled out and went down road level, but I had this beautiful picture out of the back of the bus. So I stayed in the bus and took that picture. We got back to Paro that night then. And our last activity was to visit this monastery, famous monastery. We walked past this cedar tree, which was probably about 6 feet in diameter. It was huge. And now none of these buildings here were really tall. They were all more or less 1 story, maybe 2 story. Some of the oldest statues of the Buddha are located in this particular monastery. These are just some pictures around the grounds. It's a very beautiful place. And after that, we piled in to spend our last stay. And it was at this famous hotel, which had been converted. I believe this was a zong at one time. It had been converted now to a hotel, but it's where we stayed. And so it sprawls over a very large area. This was our shack. I mean, it was really a dump, okay? So this was the interior of that place. You can see it was really Spartan. It was really a dump. And there was our bedroom, had a beautiful shower and facility in the other room, which I didn't really need to get a picture of. They use things like this to shuttle. I think they call these things tuk-tuks in Hong Kong. But anyhow, this is what they use to shuttle people around the area. And then that night before supper, then we were promised a session with a Buddhist monk. So it got put off to this particular night. And so he was going to explain the concept of gross national happiness, because they don't measure their productivity in gross national product like we do. They measured in gross national happiness, and he explained the concept and what was used for the measurements. At any rate, we were all given a scarf, and so he more or less talked for about an hour and a half. And afterwards, anybody that did have questions could ask the question. Not too many people had questions because we were all getting hungry. And so we then left the meeting, and turns out that our driver made arrangements to get a cake made and delivered to the place. And at the end of our meal, then this was brought out, and we cut it and delivered it, divided it up amongst our people. So here was our Buddhist monk. He was invited to the dinner, and so at any rate, then this was a big event. This is the reason that we did all this walking and climbing. And Isabella did this. I was the only one in the whole group that didn't, because I get vertigo. And when you see the place that these people go, you'll understand why. I didn't know Isabella was going to make it, but she didn't know either. She was going to at least make the first leg of this thing. And it's the Taksang Monastery. It's also known as Tiger's Nest. And if you want to look it up online, you can see a little bit about the history of the place. But so what they did, they started out from this level, they went up the side of this hill, and then they walked down. Here's the monastery perched, and this is overall. So they went up here, stopped here, they walked down here, and they walked back up. There were 700 steps that they did from here down and then back up. So Iz took these pictures since I wasn't along, but here's one of the reasons I didn't want to walk this. You see this? See how I think I would have got vertigo right about here, and I would have headed back down. At any rate, here they are continuing up the way, and they come to this place, which is the cafe where everybody's going to have tea. And if they don't want to go down from here, you can see now they'll descend here down, and then they'll walk back up the trail up to here. So everybody's having tea break at this point, and now they're going down here. Here's our guide meeting everybody, and you can see the thing gets going along the edge here. I'd have been petrified right about in here. And so now they reach the bottom and they start going back up. And here, now you can see that this thing gets pretty strenuous. If you look, they're going, and this gets very steep as they're going up here. And then they get to this point, which is this here, and they got to do more climbing to get up into here, because that's the end of the trip way up there. So then Iz took this on the picture. That's a picture now of the trail going back down. So, you know, where they were at that tea house or that cafe was up here. They came down here. They walked along here. Here's where I would have been very, very, very uptight crossing right there. So Iz was celebrating. This was the second youngest person in the group. She's 59. Isabella's about 76 at this point. So there's a little age gap there between the oldest and the second oldest. After they left the Tiger's Nest, then they did just a trip up to the end of that valley, which was to go to visit. This is a song again. It had burned in 1951, and they had considered tearing it down because it closes off this valley. In order to get up the valley, you have to pass through this song. But in 2016, they decided to go ahead and reconstruct the thing, and that's what they're doing now. They anticipated opening up in 2020. So on the trip, we were asked to take up a collection for the driver and the guide. This was a driver, this was our guide, and as being the talkative person in our group, was selected to do the presentation. She did a great job. So here's our group then. I'd like to just go, this was a kind of a very broad scattering of people. I'm going to go through where all these people are from. Of course, this gal is from Colorado. This guy is from Dallas, Texas. This gal is actually, she's now married to an Iranian, and she can't come to the United States because she has an Iranian passport. She's the daughter of this lady who was born in Istanbul, Turkey, now lives in Munich, Germany. This fellow here is from Ohio. She's from Dallas. This fellow here is from Spain. This fellow here is from Vietnam. He's now living in Switzerland. This gal here is from Lithuania. She's now living in New York. This fellow and this fellow are the guides. This gal here is from Australia. This gal here is living in England now, in London. She was born in India. She's Indian. Again, she's from now Berlin. She was born in Istanbul, Turkey. This fellow is from England, from London. He's the guy that rode down the stairs on his butt. Okay, this is a married couple, and they're from Australia. And this gal here is from New Zealand. She's a doctor. So we had a pretty wide scattering of people that were on that group. From Turkey, Munich, and from India, London. And this is I had to take a picture. This was taken from our hotel. We're not getting on this plane. We're getting on one later. But I took the picture of this plane because this plane is actually flying below us. It's going to fly down the valley, get lower and lower, make a U-turn and come in and land. But he's below us. Again, now this is the morning after, and so this is that's the end of our presentation. Okay. Any questions?
So if you want to ask Gerry a question or congratulate Gerry, unmute yourself and you got
Good
it.
job, Gerry. Very good job.
Excellent. Great job, Gerry.
What was the year, Gerry? What year was the trip?
It was last fall.
Okay.
Yeah, just last fall. Mhm. That's
Gerry,
why I said it was right before coronavirus time.
Yeah.
Jerry, I had a question. I put my hand up at the beginning of it, actually, in the participants, so don't pay any attention to that now. What was the bill? Obviously, there was a large amount of. My main question is the materials with which the buildings were built. Obviously, a large amount of it was wood.
Well, mainly there's a lot of stone, a lot of cement. But the windows, of course, were all made out of wood, and they were all the construction had the same design as they'd had years back. Okay. If you remember back when I showed you the pictures of the song at the very first part, if you notice, the windows were exactly the same as the new construction that they were putting up. But I would imagine they're using wood. Maybe they're actually using metal 2x4s. I'm not sure we couldn't tell. You know, the walls were already made, and so I'm not sure what they were using current construction materials.
And the materials for the temple, that last climb, the Tiger Nest Temple, that was what it was called, I think. Those would have had to be hauled all the way up that path, wouldn't they?
Sure, yeah.
Lord.
Do you know what the components of gross national happiness are?
I'm
Good
sorry,
question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm wondering what gross national happiness consists of.
Boy, you know, the monk spent probably a half hour explaining that, and I was not taking notes. Art, I can't answer your question, but you might go online, look up Bhutan, and find your answer there. It's a very nebulous guide, of course, and at the time when they started measuring it, Bhutan was measured as the top. They had the most happiness in the world in their measurement, but now they've slipped down to 5th place, and I'm not sure who passed them up, but there are other countries that consider themselves more happy than Bhutan is.
So what did you typically have to eat besides obviously rice and spinach? Did you have much meat or any meat
We
or
did.
fish?
We did have meat, probably. I know it wasn't taco. I know it wasn't that. We didn't have a lot of pork. If we had anything, it was beef, and it was very tough beef. Wasn't something that came out of the prime category. We did have pork too, coming to think of it. Yeah. So they don't have any restriction on, it's not a Muslim country, it's a Buddhist country. And so they don't have any restrictions on pork. We did have pork, but
Probably didn't have much fish because you're a long way from any water.
no, we were a long ways from water. We did not have fish. No.
Well, you mentioned that there were a lot of very young nuns and monks.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have found about many of the Eastern countries like that is that if the parents have a lot of kids or have difficulty taking care of their kids and feeding their kids, they let their kids go to become a monk or a nun so that they can get an education and so that they can have food.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, in some of the Asian countries with monks, we found out that you can go be a monk for a week.
Yeah.
You can go be a monk for 6 months. It's not like something you have to donate, you have to dedicate. The rest of your life. It doesn't have to be the rest of your life. But when we were in Vietnam and Cambodia, we found out that they weren't necessarily lifetime commitments. Or is it the same way there, or do you know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably if it was Buddhist, that seems to be what they do.
Yeah, I know in Thailand, you can just go and be a monk for a few weeks.
Well, Jerry, we'll have to check that out. 60% of the population live off the land. So it's a very agricultural country. And I would say it's not very rich. And I think their gross happy national product is trying to have people happy with what they have.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the principles of Buddhism.
Yeah.
To be happy with what you have.
Edward, I'm not seeing the stop share button at the top. I'm not sure where it is.
At the bottom.
That's
It's at
because you're
the
no
bottom.
longer sharing.
Well, there's share screen, stop video. But I thought
Yeah, you've already stopped sharing.
Yeah,
Okay.
stop.
All right.
You're okay.
So I did find, so I'm going to share real quick. So I just did a quick web search for gross national happiness Bhutan, and I found this website. And so there are the 9 aspects that they measure: psychological well-being, health, time use, education, cultural diversity and resilience, good governance, community vitality, ecological diversity, and living standards. And then I found another article that it is slipping in Bhutan. So I will send out a link to these 2 articles that I found so that you can read up about it if you'd like.
The reason being it's slipping is because the young children are getting on the internet now, and they're learning about other ways of being and having and doing. That's why it's slipping.
Yeah, Carolyn was saying that she saw some kind of program where the young people are trying to emulate us rather than.
Right.
Yeah, leave it to those young people.
Did they give you any insight into Buddhism? Did they talk about the faith Buddhism?
No, not really.
Not really. Other than the monk, no.
Gerald, can I ask a question? I just recently installed solar panels on my roof, and I don't think I remember seeing a solar panel on any of the incredibly beautiful roofs that you showed us. Did you see any solar panels while you were in Bhutan?
No, we did not.
Did you find that English is widely spoken there?
It's all English. And the reason it's English is because it's surrounded by India. India speaks English. And so it's just carried over there. They do, of course, have their own language, but when you're in amongst everybody, they all speak English to you.
Yeah, I noticed all the signs on buildings were in English. That surprised me too.
Yeah. And it's because of India being surrounding it.
In Bhutan, it's one of the countries where you have to pay so much each day just to be there, like $100, $150 a day just to be in the country?
They have you read about it, it says you're supposed to spend $200 a day, but they figure that what you're spending you don't have to carry another $200 with you to spend. It's covered in your lodging and in your meals and in all the services.
You have to travel in a group, and all the fees are within that, what you pay to go over there. You can't go on your own.
Right.
So all of the daily fees would be included in what you pay.
Yeah, you can't go in there on your own. You got to be with a group, and so.
And with a guide.
And with a guide, right.
Everybody looked very friendly, were they?
Yes.
Everybody was very friendly. We did not run into any people that were, when we had been in Dubai, we did run into people that were anti-American, but we didn't run into any of that in Bhutan.
Thank you.
The king is young because his father, the king, abdicated so that his son could take over and be a young king and introduce more modernization to the country.
True. Because they have democracy, it's a double thing, the democracy and being a kingdom.
Yeah.
That's right, Charlene.
Yeah.
So Charlene, when you went to Bhutan, obviously you weren't with Gerry and Isabel. Did you just go with another tour?
I was with a group of women. My friend from high school who lives in New York City has a travel business for women. And I had recently gone to my high school reunion and got her address, and we connected and whatnot. She was 2 years younger than me. But at any rate, when she retired, she started this travel business. And so 8 women. It was great. I mean, it was expensive. You can't do Bhutan cheap.
So did you go to quite a few of the places that you just saw?
Well, we did climb to Tiger's Nest, and yes, I did climb the whole way, and I'm glad I did it 5 years ago.
How long did that take? Was it like 2-3 hours or all day?
No, it wasn't all day, but it was at least a few hours. I didn't get a chance to review my notes that I might have somewhere, you know what I mean? And I didn't review my pictures, but I do have some fabulous pictures. And it was well worth every step. And I was glad I could do it.
Well, yeah. Phil, if this were a normal meeting and we were meeting at the library or a restaurant or something like that, especially if it were at the library, then we would all adjourn and go and eat Thai food. There's a Thai restaurant right around the corner from the library where we meet at Frankfurt and Preston, but obviously that's not going to happen. Or sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, we meet at a restaurant and, pay ahead of time and order ahead of time. So obviously we're not able to do that.
What they advertise the climb to Tiger's Nest, they say it should take a minimum of 4 hours. And it's probably between 4 and 5, depending on how.
Is that up and back?
Yeah.
No, one way. I think I took around 3 hours going up, but we stopped for tea. This is the thing. You stop for tea, so I don't really know the exact time. Coming down was a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So you made the whole trip.
We started going up around 8 o'clock in the morning.
Was it hot? I mean, I bet it was hot.
Not that hot.
Yeah.
And did they give you anything for the altitude? Or did you have any kind of?
No problem.
You know, because in Peru, they give you like that tea that you can.
Right.
But we weren't up that high, I don't think. It's the Tiger's Nest is what? 9,000 above sea level,
9,000.
approximately.
Yeah, 9,000.
But
Right.
we've been climbing the mountains and the hills
Yeah.
the
So
preceding week.
Jerry, Isabella, I think Luann had a question. So
Okay, Luann?
again,
Where
which
are you?
company organized this that you went with? It was who?
It was a subsidiary of National Geographic.
Expeditions.
Okay.
And did you get an email or did you just go look under National Geographic on the web?
I went online looking for a cheap trip.
So how much did you pay for this trip?
What did we pay per person? Couple thousand?
I think it was 2,400, I think.
No, I think.
Well, that is cheap, yeah.
Plus
think we
airfare.
got a discount.
Plus all your airfare, right?
I think it was 18. I think that the tour was about 1,800 per person.
Wow. For how many days?
9 days, was it? 10?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem that expensive.
Wow.
I find the deals.
Yeah.
There was Rhodes Scholar with a bunch of older people, which our age, they paid a lot more. I could look up-
Isabella, did you think when you were climbing up that last one, the Tiger's Nest, what would have happened if you had fallen? I mean, it seems like it was so remote.
It was not in my world. I wasn't going to ever go there, Julia. No,
you
I'm
don't
going to
think
do it.
about falling.
I can guarantee you'd have hit the bottom.
No, you have to have faith that you can do it.
Well, let's give Jerry a big hand.
Very good, Jerry.
Good, Jerry, good job.
Really interesting.
And hopefully we'll see some of you
Fine.
Thursday.
Can I call you back? We're on the last part of our friendship.